I'm sure you heard about this great controversy going on now in the Olympics. And just today there was a meeting which exploded about this boxer who identifies as a girl when biologically this boxer is a boy. And you may have heard about the first bout that he had with an Italian girl who basically dropped out of the boxing match almost immediately because of the intensity of his punches, being that he is a male. And this is a very, very controversial issue. And really, this was the opening of the Olympics, because the opening of the Olympics really was also glorifying this this trans idea that we should, as many people feel, we should be embracing. And what's really fascinating is it's really important to understand what is going on and how we have entered into such a state of delusion. And what's really interesting is that here we are at a time in history when we are quite enlightened, right? We are so enlightened, we have progressed so far as a society, and yet we regress to such a state of delusion where we lose touch with reality, truly reality, like biological reality. And this is not the first time in history this has happened. In many, whenever the world experiences enlightenment, there seems to be these great levels of confusion that start entering in. And it's very important to understand all of this, because we know from our Hasidic teachings that whenever anything is going on in the world, there is always something deeper in the spiritual reality of the world that is actually behind what is going on. Sort of like when someone is addicted to something, very often we think they must just love that so much. But actually the reality is that very often, most often, what's driving them to that thing is not the thing itself, that even though they're chasing after that, but it is some deep yearning that they have, which they are either not consciously in touch with or don't know how to express, and therefore it ends up being expressed in a very unhealthy way. And in many respects, this is what's going on. But on the very simple level, before we go to that deeper spiritual level, which I'm going to take you on, there is just misplaced compassion, where many people want to support that a child says, I feel this way or I feel that way, and therefore we must support their feelings and hear them. We don't do that in any other area of life. Like, do we let our children vote? Well, why not? Do we let them drive cars? Do we let them own guns? We don't let them do any of these things because we understand that they're still children. That's not a criticism. That's just that they're young and developing. And once they mature and they can make mature decisions, then we can put them in the position of making those mature decisions. But when it comes to mutilating a body, we suddenly follow their feelings. But a lot of that has to do with misplaced compassion, where we're feeling bad. And you know what the Torah teaches us about feeling bad in a misplaced context? When you show compassion to someone, when you should be guiding them, then you will end up being cruel. When you are cruel to someone, when you should have compassion, that is also a problem, right? But whenever we show compassion, when we are meant to be guiding them, that will end up showing up as cruelty. And unfortunately, we're seeing how so many of these kids are now becoming adults and have deep regrets for what they did, and are really upset at the adults who had responsibility to guide them at that time, who just followed their path instead of guiding them. That's on a very superficial level what is going on. On a simple, I shouldn't say superficial, on a simple level what's going on. But on a more deeper spiritual level what's going on is similar to the difference between science and religion. You have science, many people ask, how are we going to reconcile? How do you reconcile science and religion? The truth of the matter is they don't really need to be reconciled. They are two completely different arenas of study. Science is simply human beings coming into a physical world, like a biological world, a physical world where things were created physically a certain way, and we want to understand how they work, of which we've made great progress, and then at the same time we've barely scratched the surface. You think about the human brain, what do we know about the human brain? Almost nothing. But then again, we've made great progress at the same time. And that is what science is. It's a study of the physical world. And that's why science continuously updates itself. In a certain respect, we say that science is slowly catching up to religion. In other words, it discovers more and more and more and becomes more and more aligned with the truth. And that's why, scientists from the previous generation, we may have a newer, more updated and insightful idea of the way things work, which they didn't understand then, which didn't make them wrong. It just made it that they only understood this to an extent. We understand it to a further extent. And then in another 50 years, we'll understand it to a further extent, and they'll look back at what we understood and understand that that was very limited. That's what science is. Religion is not investigating what is. Religion is investigating why things are. We're really investigating the spirit of things. Why did God create this? What is its purpose? For what was it created? That's really what religion is investigating, the spirit. And it's very important for us to be able to create this distinction for the sake of where I would like to take you, which is the difference between the physical creation and spiritual reality before it manifests itself in a physical form. Because we have gender, masculine and feminine, male and female, in body form. We know that there is a male body and there is a female body, right? And we also have masculine and feminine on a soul level, in the spirit of a person. There are masculine forms of energy and there are feminine forms of energy. In fact, the reason why we have physical genders is because they are simply a physical form and a physical manifestation of these entities, these genders, as they are in spirit. And that's why most people don't even understand what male and female really are. Male and female are not actually physical entities. That's only one expression of gender. But on a deeper level, gender is a concept of operating in a feminine mode or operating in a masculine mode. For example, you probably know if you've ever gone to a Home Depot or any other, or Lowe's or any type of store like that, and you ask for a certain part, and they will often ask you, do you want the female or the male part? And there's no one there saying that the female part can identify as male or the male can identify as female, right? Of course not. Because male and female, when they talk about it, right, in such a store, they're talking about the way this part operates is in a feminine form. The way this part operates is in a masculine form, okay, which would require an entirely different class of understanding what masculine energy is and what feminine energy is, and what a masculine expression is and the feminine expression is. But they are two different forms of expression, and they even show up in parts that we buy for all different types of machines and all different types of construction, where one is masculine and one is feminine, and that's never changing. It is what it is. Why? Because it evolved into a physical embodiment. And once it evolves into a physical embodiment, that is what it is. However, we have this spiritually as well. By way of example, we are taught that that God is married the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, and God is the male in the relationship, and the Jewish people are the female in the relationship. I hope that doesn't bother any men here who just found out that you are the female in relationship with God. But what does all of that mean? This is in the spiritual side of it, right? Because God is not a physical entity. It means that God shines his light, which is a masculine expression, when one gives off of themselves. And we are which is like the sun, which is another analogy which is used for God. God is the sun, and we, the Jewish people, are the moon, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why the Jewish people follow the lunar cycle, because we are the moon energy. What's the moon energy? It's a feminine energy, and that feminine energy is that we reflect the light that comes from God. We reflect it to unbelievable places and accomplish unbelievable things, which the sun, depends on us to do, right? But we're not emitting our light like the sun emits its own light. We are reflecting the light that we are getting. We're taking what is given to us and creating something magnificent with it. That is a form of feminine energy. And so we have in spirit, masculine and feminine, and we have in body, we have masculine and feminine. Now what happens is that in spirit, it is in fact possible for someone who is a biological male to be very feminine oriented in their spirit. And that's why we find men who are very feminine in the sense, again, not in the way people normally think of it necessarily, but just in the sense of the way they emote, the way their EQ, which may be very high, which often is associated with a woman, but there are men who have emote in a very feminine manner. And there are women who emote in a very masculine manner. And that's no problem. As long as the man knows that I am a man in body and I have very strong feminine attributes, which I can bring to the world. But God designed me as a man and I am a man. And likewise, a woman who knows that I have a woman's body, a feminine body. In the physical manifestation, I am a woman, and yet there are very strong spiritual attributes in my soul, which are actually masculine. See, the moment a person lets go of acknowledging who they are physically, they are starting to lose touch with physical reality. And the moment a human being loses touch with physical reality, they are in a very dangerous space because they start floating into delusion. And when a person flows into delusion and subjectivity and feelings, right, without being anchored, they get lost. And all types of crazy things can begin to happen. And that's why God gave us the physical world to anchor ourselves into while we work with our spirit so that the spirit never drifts off too far and loses touch. It's always anchored. That's the key, to always remain anchored and not enter into an entire state of delusion, because then a person has lost touch and will lose sight and definitely no longer be connected to the truth. So is male and female are we binary beings? Yes, on our physical level, we are binary beings. There is male and there is female. There's a sperm, there's an egg. There's an X chromosome, there's a Y chromosome. No one can change that. We can mutilate our bodies as much as we want. We can inject it with as many hormones as we want. It doesn't change reality. And we must not lose touch with reality. One of the signs of a great spiritual master. See, many people who, when they seek to be deep spiritual people, and they explore and they advance themselves greatly, and there are actual movements that actually encourage this, which you probably know of, and they encourage separating oneself from the body, because the body doesn't let you, explore and get beyond the limits of what the body is. That actually takes a person out of touch with reality. That's a very dangerous thing to do. And that's why Judaism specifically has a mission to bring the Spirit of God into the universe. The universe is a physical manifestation of spiritual energy, and we experience it as we know it to be. But we can bring to it a level of non-binary fluid consciousness, which is very powerful and infuses it with the energy of the divine. But that's all within the context of knowing the reality of the way the physical world is. So there is a binary reality, which is our physical world, and then there is a fluid reality, which we all have also, which is our spirit. Now, what's been happening, fascinatingly, is, and the Olympics is a very strong expression of this, because in a certain respect, the Olympics is the glorification of the body, of what the body can do, what the body can achieve. And what happens very often is when we glorify that, is those achievements, while in and of themselves they're amazing, but we can end up losing ourselves in simply the level of body. And it seems that the world is rejecting that. And the world is saying, we don't want to be stuck in the level of body, the shallow level of body. We want to free ourselves of that. And this whole trans movement is a movement possibly being driven by some deep yearning within humanity to escape the limits of the body and to experience the fluidness that actually is available to us in spirit. However, being that the world doesn't understand what they're dealing with, they are resolving it in a very dangerous and destructive way. Because they're resolving it by actually trying to change the body so that it can just be a soul experience. And the reality is that you can't change the body. The whole idea is to have the soul experience within the context of the body. You know, life is always about balance. When we don't have balance, right, things go haywire. It's like, you know, we need to be loving to the people around us, but there also needs to be some level of discipline with the people around us. Some level, or let me say, some level of respect, not just love, but also respect. There has to be the combination, the right balance. And with different people, there needs to be a different balance. And very often we just go to extremes, you know, and we reject anything that is not aligned with our extreme, of which very little of the world will be. And that's what's happening over here. Where there is this mutilation of the body, instead of understanding that you can have fluidity, but that fluidity can't just be chaotic. It's got to be within the context. And it's within the context of your body. And this is really what is something that we always need to remember. And this may be the undercurrent and the underlying of everything that's going on. The bottom line, we cannot deny physical reality. And at the same time, we must continue to explore our spiritual reality. And if we can have them live side by side, even though the reconciling of the two is not always very easy, and sometimes it makes us unpopular because we're a little bit different than other people in the way we do things. When a man shows up with feminine energy, it may be off-putting to certain people who are judgmental. It may be. But if they stick with that and are consistent and true to it, they will bring a magnificent expression to the world of how a man can be. That is what can be offered. So we must not get lost in the craziness of what's going on. But we also have to understand the great opportunity that lies within every single one of us, in that every single one of our souls are very different types of blends of energies that God has given specifically to us. So God gives us a custom designed body, and He gives us a custom designed soul, and the merging of the two is the beauty, the uniqueness, and magnificence that we as an individual bring to the world.